Hello, I'm Barbara O'Neill. Today, I want to talk to you about something that's so fundamental to life, yet often misunderstood: water. You've probably heard a lot about how important it is to stay hydrated, but there's much more to it than just drinking water. In fact, water is the second most vital element for life, right after oxygen. We can only survive a few minutes without oxygen, but did you know the human body can endure nearly 2 weeks without water? But there's another crucial component that goes hand in hand with water: salt. Together, water and salt maintain the body's delicate balance, ensuring that every cell functions optimally. Dehydration isn't just about a lack of water. It's also about not having the right balance of electrolytes, especially salt. So today, let's explore how water and salt work together to keep your body thriving. And as a special thank you for joining me today, we're giving away 100 free copies of my best-selling book to subscribers. So, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about why you want to win my best-selling book. Water, the second most vital element needed for life. So the number one vital element needed for life is oxygen. And that's not a surprise, is it? The second most vital element needed for life is water. You can go 3 minutes without oxygen. You can go a couple of weeks without water. I always thought it was 3 days without water until I read a book called The Long Walk about some people who were escaping the Siberian work camp, and they were in the desert and they went nearly 2 weeks without water. Water is the second most vital element needed for life. In fact, where there's no water, you don't usually get people living, do you? I always say to people, how much water do you drink? And these are some of the answers. I don't like water. If I drink water, my feet swell. If I drink water, I'm going to the bathroom all day. Those last two answers tell me that the water's not getting inside the cell. So how do we get the water inside the cell? We have to go to the third most vital element needed for life, and that is sodium. The fourth most vital element needed for life is potassium. So let's go back to sodium. In nature, we find the highest amount of sodium in seawater, and seawater contains 92 minerals. Of those 92 minerals, 30%, approximately 30% is sodium, and of those 92 minerals, approximately 50% is chloride. Now, because sodium chloride take up the most amount, they're the first crystals formed when the water is evaporated. So what man does is he scoops up the first crystals formed, he bleaches them white, puts aluminium with it so that it runs freely, and there's your table salt. Table salt is a dangerous salt, because we now have two very harsh minerals that if you were to inject both of those into the blood, you would die. I used to think it was just 3 days until I read an incredible story in The Long Walk. It's about a group of people who escaped from a Siberian work camp and survived almost 2 weeks in the desert with little to no water. It really opened my eyes to the incredible resilience of the human body and just how essential water is for our survival. However, here's the thing. Simply drinking water isn't always enough. I often hear people say, "I don't like water," or "If I drink water, my feet swell," or even, "It makes me run to the bathroom all day." When I hear these complaints, it tells me that the water isn't making it into their cells. This is where sodium, the third most vital element for life, comes into play, along with potassium. These minerals are essential for proper water absorption and hydration at the cellular level. But not all sodium is created equal. In nature, sodium comes with a wealth of other minerals, particularly in seawater. Unfortunately, table salt is highly processed, often stripped of its natural mineral content, and altered in ways that can make it harmful rather than helpful. Today, I want to explore the importance of natural sodium and potassium for hydration and why common table salt might not be the solution you think it is. Let's dive into the world of minerals and hydration. The highest concentration of mineral inside the cell is potassium. The highest concentration outside the cell is sodium. And in this bilayered membrane that is around every cell, there are sodium-potassium pumps. And these sodium-potassium pumps are ever going like this, maintaining the balance between potassium and sodium. But when someone's not eating enough fruits and vegetables, and that's where you get most of your potassium, and they're putting table salt on everything far too much, what happens now is sodium levels rise and potassium levels drop. There is a small amount of sodium in the cell, but when this happens, you see osmosis and diffusion happens when the highest concentration merges into the lowest. So now sodium levels inside the cell are rising, which they should not, and the cell swells. What's that called? High blood pressure. The doctor is right. Table salt will contribute to high blood pressure. There's a French doctor named Dr. Lelangre, and he's written a whole book on salt. He said, when people come to me with high blood pressure, I put them on Celtic salt. Why does he put them on Celtic salt? Because Celtic salt contains 82 minerals. It's a hand-harvested sea salt. So the minerals are in the Celtic salt in their balanced form. What about Himalayan salt? In many places, Himalayan salt is a lot easier to get. There's about 75 minerals. So it's pretty good. But I prefer the Celtic salt. And one reason is that the Celtic salt has 3 magnesiums. It contains magnesium chloride and magnesium bromide and magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is a water-hungry molecule, and this explains why the Celtic salt is such a moist salt, especially when we've had a lot of rain, because those 3 magnesiums absorb the moisture. And because magnesium is a water-hungry molecule, it can be used to help the water get into the cell. So when you take a crystal of Celtic salt, put it on your tongue, and some say, how big's a crystal? Well, if you've got high blood pressure, start small, about the size of a sesame seed. I don't have high blood pressure, so I might have about 3 times little sesame seeds. Put it on your tongue, your mucous membranes start absorbing the minerals, the magnesium is taken to the cell membrane, and you drink your water, and that magnesium pulls that water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body. The only time excess water drinking can be dangerous is if people drink too much at once and don't have the minerals that are in the Celtic salt to pull that water inside the cell. Taking a small crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, followed by drinking water, allows the magnesium to help pull water into your cells, offering quick hydration. Sodium is not only essential for getting glucose into the blood, it's also crucial for pulling water into our cells. This is why it's considered the 3rd most vital element for life. If you look into any anatomy, physiology, or biology book, you'll find these facts clearly outlined. While water is vital, salt plays an equally important role. And it's not just any salt. Natural salts like Celtic or Himalayan are packed with minerals that our bodies need. Potassium is mostly found inside our cells and comes primarily from fresh fruits and vegetables. Calcium, on the other hand, cannot get into the cell without the presence of vitamin D. When vitamin D is available, it pulls calcium into the cell, which acts like a king, allowing other minerals to piggyback in. Magnesium is another key player here. When you take a crystal of Celtic salt and place it on your tongue, the magnesium helps pull water into the cell. This action starts a little motor in the cell membrane, generating a unit of energy. So if you're feeling tired mid-morning, have a pinch of salt and a glass of water for a quick natural boost. So sodium not only is required to get the glucose into the blood, it's also required to get the water into the cell. So it's sodium. It's the third most vital element needed for life. And you can get that information on the 4 vitals in any anatomy and physiology book, chemistry book, biology book. I'm just giving you the facts here. So as you can see, water is very important. But so is the salt. And again, the potassium is found in all your fresh fruits and vegetables. Calcium cannot get into the cell by itself. It needs vitamin D. When vitamin D is present, the calcium is pulled inside the cell. And remember, I showed you the other day that calcium's called the king because when it gets into the cell, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of calcium. Something else happens. I'd like to go back to this for a moment. When the magnesium's put on the tongue and you have the glass of water, or half a glass, a little bit later the other half glass, that magnesium pulls the water inside the cell. And in the bilaid membrane that is around every cell, there's a little motor. And when the water's pulled through the membrane and into the cell, it causes that little motor to start spinning. And the spinning of that motor gives us a unit of energy. So when you're feeling a little tired or maybe a little bit peckish mid-morning, have the salt and have the water and you'll get a little bit of a pickup. So when everyone's going outside to have their cigarette or their cup of coffee, you have your crystal of salt, your glass of water. Absolutely, if you're working in an office, go outside and find a tree. Remember what the trees are giving off? Life-giving oxygen. Breathe deeply from your abdominal muscle, and that blast of oxygen, remember what the oxygen does at the cellular level? Oxygen will give you 18 times more energy. We've looked at the inside of the workings of the cell a few times, and the way I explain it, it looks like there's one energy cycle per cell, but it is not true. So what I've drawn for you here is a whole lot of little energy cycles. In fact, in the muscle cell, you can have 100 energy cycles to a muscle cell. I can hardly get my mind around that. And that's why the saying that you will receive more energy than you expend on your morning walk, because each one of those little energy cycles will give 18 times more energy if enough oxygen is going into your body. Glucose, it can't get into the cell by itself. It has to have insulin. Insulin's the key that unlocks the door to let the glucose into the cell. And what happens with many people, before diabetes develops, insulin resistance develops. You've heard of insulin resistant? And when insulin resistance develops, the cell's resisting insulin, so the glucose can't get into the cell, so the glucose stays in the blood, and the brain says to the pancreas, more insulin, but the problem's not more insulin, the problem is there's insulin resistance at the cellular level. So what causes the insulin resistance? It's the high carbohydrate, high sugar diet. It's just the cell gets to the point where it says, we've got enough, I'm sick of the sight of you. So how to recover from insulin resistance is to get the glucose, those carbohydrates right down. Get the fiber up, the good proteins and the healthy fats. That's the best way to recover from insulin resistance. But you just imagine for a moment, and this is happening in America a lot today, people are not drinking enough water. They're not having the whole salt, and they're definitely not having many greens, which is where your magnesium is. So the little bit of water they're having is not getting inside the cell. They don't go out in the sunshine because they're scared of getting skin cancer. So they're not getting their vitamin D, so the calcium can't get in and the minerals can't get in. And they're trying to lose weight, so they've listened to a lot of the media hype that you've got to stop the fat because fat will make you fat. So they're on a high carbohydrate diet. Remember what fat will do? It'll give you satisfaction or a satiation, a full feeling. Sodium is not only essential for getting glucose into the blood, it's also crucial for pulling water into our cells. This is why it's considered the third most vital element for life. If you look into any anatomy, physiology, or biology book, you'll find these facts clearly outlined. While water is vital, salt plays an equally important role, and it's not just any salt. Natural salts like Celtic or Himalayan are packed with minerals that our bodies need. Potassium is mostly found inside our cells and comes primarily from fresh fruits and vegetables. So let's begin at the mouth. Did you know that in a state of chronic dehydration, too much saliva is produced? Some people think a dry mouth is a sign of dehydration. It is, and too much saliva can be a sign of dehydration. You see, when not enough water is going into the body, and how much water should go in? Let's do an assessment of that. So our kidneys, to know how much water should go in, we need to look at how much is coming out. So in our kidneys, we urinate out 1.5 litre loss. Now, a litre is the same as a quart. So I'm probably best, because I'm speaking to an American audience, to say quart loss. 1.5 quart loss. Out of the skin, it can be 0.5 of a quart loss. Out of the colon, 0.3 of a quart loss. And out of the lungs, it's about a 0.2 of a quart loss. So that equals 2.5 quart loss every day. So 2 quarts is 8 cups. So that's 10 glasses, 8 ounce glasses of water a day is lost out of the body. And we have no reserve tank on the back, do we? The only water that's going in is the water we take in. So we should be drinking at least 2 quarts a day. At least, more if possible. Now at the moment, because you're having a steam sauna every day, I wouldn't be surprised if you've got a 0.8 of a quart loss coming out of your skin because you perspire profusely. The other half can come in your fruits and your vegetables, maybe your herb teas, vegetable juice through the day. So that's how much water we need. And Dr. Batman Gehaldi, he showed that the first place that we feel that water loss, if we're not replacing the water, the body goes into a form of drought management. And it releases a hormone to manage this drought management. It's called histamine. And if someone has an allergic response to something, what are they given? Antihistamines. You know the best antihistamine is just water. So the first place that water is taken from to try and maintain full blood volume in the veins and arteries is the lining of the stomach. We have a thick mucosal wall lining the stomach. Let's start with the mouth. Did you know that in a state of chronic dehydration, the body actually produces too much saliva? Most people think that a dry mouth is the main sign of dehydration, and while that's true, too much saliva can also indicate that the body is lacking water. When there isn't enough water intake, the body starts going into a sort of drought management. So how much water should we be drinking? To get an idea, let's look at what's being lost daily. Through urination alone, our bodies lose about 1.5 quarts. Then, about 0.5 quarts is lost through the skin, especially if you're sweating a lot. The colon accounts for another 0.3 quarts, and the lungs expel about 0.2 quarts just through breathing. Altogether, that's roughly 2.5 quarts lost each day, equivalent to about 10 cups of water. and since we don't have a reserve tank for water, the only way to replenish it is by drinking enough. We should aim for at least 2 quarts a day, more if possible, especially if you're engaging in activities like steam saunas where you perspire profusely. When the body senses water loss, it releases histamine to manage the situation. Interestingly, the best antihistamine isn't a pill, it's simply water. The first place water is drawn from during dehydration is the stomach's lining, which has a thick mucosal wall.
Our brain cells shrink when they don't have enough water. Headaches are common when we don't have enough water. Negative thought patterns can develop when our brain cells don't have enough water. I can get my hand to go in and out like that without pain because around every joint there's fluid. And that fluid is synovial fluid, and it is 99% water. In a state of dehydration, the body can take some water from there to maintain full blood volume in the major arteries and veins. And so if I have pain in there, maybe it's called arthritis, but actually maybe it's just a state of dehydration. Our eyeball moves around in water, so we need water at every single step. Also, our lungs. Now, at the bottom of our lungs, I'll draw you a small picture of our lungs so that you'll understand this. So here's our lungs here. That's one lung. So your trachea splits and comes down, and then it splits again into little bronchioles. It's quite a process. And then at the end of every bronchiole, looks like a little bunch of grapes, but they're alveoli. So at the end of the bronchioles, you've got the alveoli, and this is where the gaseous exchange takes place. Over every alveoli, there's a little blood capillary network, and it is in that blood capillary network where the oxygen is picked up from the alveoli, and the blood drops the carbon dioxide and we breathe out. In every alveoli, there's a minuscule droplet of water. And because of the surface tension of water, when you breathe out, that little alveoli collapses, which allows all the carbon dioxide, the majority of it, to be breathed out. So that now when you breathe in, you can breathe in more oxygen. In a state of dehydration, that little droplet of water is not as it should be, which means that doesn't totally collapse when you breathe out, which means you can't get your full quota of oxygen. But what also happens, the body, to prevent the water loss, it can start constricting the little bronchioles so that we don't lose water. And so one of the signs of dehydration can be constricted breathing. The blood gets very thick in dehydration. Our blood needs to be nice and thin so the heart can pump it easily, so that the little filtering units in our kidneys can filter it with ease.
Water is essential for every part of our body, from our brains to our joints and lungs. Proper hydration keeps our systems functioning optimally and can even alleviate common issues like headaches, joint pain, and breathing difficulties. So, make drinking enough water a daily priority. Your body will thank you.